6 weeks and I still haven't heard about my permit. Not even just the most basic. You fill this out. So
Yeah.
So all I can do is just keep working and hope that it pops up sometime soon.
No, stay there, stay there. Yeah, stay there, for sure.
So yeah, so that's the big thing right now. It's just painting and cleaning and trying to get equipment and everything else. So, but in theory, tomorrow I'll have all my equipment. Yeah. Waiting.
How long is it supposed to take for appointment?
One thing, but 6 weeks to even schedule something. I mean, because I'm not expecting me to call and they go, yeah, we'll be there at 3. You know? But then the challenge is that they come in, this is the first time I've done that. If they come in and then they say, oh, we need to change this, and this, and we'll have to come back and stuff, and, that's that. So that's, I've always known that was part I can't control, and part that, will hang me up.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So, I'm hopeful, but right now it seems like fun.
Yeah.
It'd be nice when I can bake again, just because I haven't been able to. But my oven's supposed to get fixed tomorrow. I got a used oven, and I figure even if I just bake stuff and give it away or do something, for the neighborhood or something, I'll try to get.
Hi guys, you're live.
And who knows? Maybe
Oh, we're live. Oh, from this camera here?
Thank you.
We don't even have that people.
Well, we have to have 5, so we're not sure.
Bonus barbecue.
Barbara. And I know she wanted to have. I haven't heard from anybody saying they're missing, so. Yeah, nobody said that they were.
So you and Chattanooga a couple weekends ago. So ultimate.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Where were you?
Hey, Jim.
We came over to watch the girls game
How's it going?
after our first.
Good, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah. Yes, bring it forward.
That's
It's
like
not fun.
literally the worst
Yeah,
part
that was
of
it.
it.
Tough adjustment there.
Yeah. So
I mean,
My hands.
everybody's kind of.
yeah,
I missed it.
driving
Yeah.
home, I still had. to
How's
take a
the,
shower.
the committee going?
Oh my gosh, it's going really well. We
Yeah.
had,
Well, I just.
I don't even know, probably 15 meetings.
Wow.
And we've had 3 different meetings with
Yeah, I wanted to
DPS.
talk about this.
Talk about how state can partner with DPS.
Yeah.
So those are the
Is this a good angle, do you think, Ms. Hollis?
I mean, I can see what 3 or 4 people.
Yeah.
Yeah, how did you guys?
We won each. It was the first game was like 8 to 6, and then it was like 11 to 6, and then 13 to 2.
What are some of the things that
Huh.
are coming, kind of
That's good. Right?
Yeah.
or suggested that?
Did they win all of them?
Yeah, they won all 3 games.
Yeah. They're pretty good.
They, the problem with that is only Nashville team.
The rest were just.
Well, we only played because twice. Nashville, we played 20. Yeah.
Do you think this is better?
So, yeah, so she, what happened was.
Actually, yes. As weird as it is, because you can see up under the table,
Yeah, I know. I'm like,
but you see more people.
yeah, it's a little more of a wider angle.
Yeah.
They took it a little easy, but they were a team that's playing together.
Is it working?
Yeah.
Am I gonna do something or?
We're live streaming and you and I.
Okay.
Everyone's sitting at this table.
Okay. But, then Ms. Hollis, are you gonna show that over there? Or are we gonna show the facility, right, the facility?
She didn't send, she didn't send me.
I sent it to everybody, you know, so that we can have access to it.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I think she's got the meeting agenda.
And then like the links to click on,
links are
because
on the
Kyla's
agenda.
gonna need to click on.
The links are on the agenda,
Okay.
so you should be,
Okay.
whoever can hear it.
Yeah, I clicked
Can you
right
hear
through
me?
from there.
Can you like have just do the tech?
Sure.
Looks like she's got it. Are you able to click the links on in the agenda? Ms. Hollis?
Yes, I have everything up.
Okay, she says she's got it up.
Great.
She can click on the
Alice
links.
will do it? Oh, from home, like.
Yeah, she's controlling the, yeah.
When she heard it was falling to me, she's like,
Oh,
let me get it.
So they want, she's hooked in through.
Miss Barbara, I have complete faith in you. You are gonna do great.
Okay. And it'll appear.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Have you ever gone?
Appear on here. You want to look at it?
Right, because we'll have to click on, Kyla's gonna do the part of this. And then we just have to vote on the budget, so the budget has to, this slide has to be in there.
Yeah, well, you can.
Miss Barbara.
Miss
Barbara, can you log in?
I will see. I went through this.
You gonna run through my account?
Yeah. So I guess, yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, they bring together where. If they don't have enough, people. You get the young baby, it's like a sheet license. So you get the full. New can be something.
Numbers and then once you start
Crazy.
speaking.
Here's what teachers say, like, they just open Almost here. We want to wait for. Ross to pull it up.
Where do you want me to go and pay?
We just want to pull up the agenda.
Send my email.
That's what we're doing. This will be the call to order. You want to do the roll call numbers? You ready?
Betsy Bachman,
Here.
Vicky Rafferty,
Here.
Lloyd Baker,
Here?
Nadia Medina, Staten, Susan Barber,
Here.
Chris Rodenbach,
Here?
Kyla Posey, Joel Alvarado, Rivera,
Huge.
Morgan Knight, and Cody Walker.
So we have a form,
Yeah, sure.
which is terrific. All right. I posted the agenda, more than posted, I should say. Everybody get a chance to take a look at it. If so, is there a motion to approve it? A motion to approve the agenda. And the second,
Second.
and as far as the previous minutes, Nadia took care of those, right, Maureen? And you-
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions, or is there a motion to approve the previous minutes? Motion to approve, previous minutes. Second,
I'll second.
all those in favor? Raise your hand. All opposed? All right. So the third action item I've got, Dr. Bachman, is to get on this budget and make sure that we're square with what we're doing. Is there anything, I believe last time we left it that it was something that we could just,
Right, nothing's changed with the budget. I had my staffing conference, which is just part of the process, and everything's fine, what we talked about before, so no, there's been no change at all since our last meeting.
okay. Are there any questions or any discussion that people like to have about the budget? The last meeting? Next month?
Last year.
Yeah.
It
feels
seems like that,
last
right?
year, yeah. All right, if there are no hesitations and no issues, then is there a motion to approve the budget that was presented by Dr. Bachman?
Motion.
Okay, motion, second? Second. All right, it's seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hands. All opposed? Okay, the budget passes. Yay.
Thank you.
You did all the hard work. We just talked about it. Before we get into this discussion item, is there anything else that I just didn't know?
I was just gonna talk about, my ACES presentation, which was today. We had the first one in December, so I just brought a copy of the slides that, just walk us through it.
Is there, I'm guessing, I can't tell. I'm guessing that, oh yeah, there they are.
So this is something new this year, for in APS in December, and then this month, all of us, the principals, kind of presented information that was asked on a slide deck. So kind of a check-in on how the school's going data-wise, that kind of thing. So you see ACES stands for Accountability, Continuous Improvement, Equity, Support. And so, as I said, we did this in December as well. So just this information on the front right now, this is just right now, we do have a vacancy for a PE teacher. We're filling it with a substitute. I do think a PE teacher, he's gonna start April 11th, should be awesome, he can start early. So that'll be taken care of. And so our projected budget for next year, you can see we're plus up 600,000 because we're about 40 over last year's projection. Our population, again, this is the information that's asked for. Of course, there's so many more facets to our population, but English learners, students with disabilities, and gifted. So we look at attendance and behavior, and our attendance take rate is 96.5. So maybe one of our teachers on here could talk about what that, what does that mean, attendance take rate?
That's the percentage that we're like logging it for every.
Right, so it's, teachers need to take attendance in the first 15 minutes of class, basically. It's a way to keep count the kids and that kind of thing. So that's just an important point. 96.5 is pretty good. Schools that have like elementary, it's a little easier because they don't change classes.
Yeah.
All those times today, you know, they're usually there the whole day, so you don't have to take attendance. But anyway, so that's ours, 96.5. You know, we have had a lot, what happens sometimes is substitutes. When we have substitute teachers, it doesn't happen in the first 15 minutes. The teachers have to send the roster down to the office and that kind of thing. And sometimes it just doesn't get logged until later. It's just a function of this year for sure. A lot of schools are down. We're usually about 97%, 98. But,
I don't know how this factors into it, but within the last month, like there are 2 or 3 times that my internet's been out or Infinite Campus is down, so I can't log in until later. So I don't know if that factors into it too, but
just missed the opportunity.
Yeah.
So, and then the average daily attendance rate, and that is 92.7 students have missed 10 or fewer days this year. And students not chronically absent, that is a CCRPI benchmark, and that is, which is different than ours. That is about 80% of our kids have not been chronically absent. Chronically absent is, that is about, Ms. Hollis, you and there's at six absences.
That's actually the one that the students have to report 90% of the days that they are enrolled in school above 30 days. So if a student has been enrolled in school beyond the first month, then they start counting towards CCRPI, and that is the percentage of students that have met 90% or better.
Okay. And then our suspension rate, which is down over, which is good to be down, decreased over previous years. Last year was a great rate. We really didn't suspend anybody, but we weren't here. Which was great. So this is according to the 2019-20 school year. So we're down. Also, many schools with the diversity that we have looks very similar to this, the demographic. Our males of color have a higher suspension rate than males. It's interesting that ours this year is females have a little bit more suspension, which is a little unusual. So,
What are the most common things that students are being suspended for? Sometimes it's hard to discern like continue, like whether it's like attendance or skipping versus like more like fighting or something like that, you know?
so
This
suspension-
actual table is only for out of school suspension.
we can hardly hear you, Ms. Hollis, really.
She says the numbers.
Only for suspension.
Out of school suspensions only are on this table, is right, I think she was saying.
Okay. And of course, we look at suspension as in school and out of school. So the things that be out of school absolutely are something like a weapon, fighting, battery or physical contact, not inadvertent, but physical contact with an employee and something like that. Those are serious. Drugs, marijuana, something like that. Yes, it's usually out of school suspension. But it's been very few this year, and very few tribunal hearing requests. I think we've only had 3, which is, so the serious incidents are way decreased. It's not that way in other high schools. Really listening to those presentations today, there is a lot of unrest and conflict resolution and gang activity that a couple of schools have really tried to get over. So we're very fortunate to have really the stable culture that we've got this year. It's just, I think a lot of some of our behavior problems are really stemming from just mental health issues. Some of our kids with special needs, special education, really struggling with behavior. Just a few. I mean, it's really so small, but it's major. It's small, but it's major when it happens. So hence the reason we're adding more support next year. But so the next page is just so the intersection of attendance and course failure. So ADA stands for average daily attendance. So so 93% of our kids, if you have 93% or better, so you're here 93% of the time or better, you can see the failures very, very small. So 0 failures right there because you're coming every day. 2%, 2.3 or 1.4. So coming to school is very helpful to passing. And then you can see how it goes down. I mean, if you're not here at the bottom, and if you're not here often, 78%, 78 students failed 3 or more classes. So it's this way. This is nationwide. This is just the way it is, but just breaks it down from Midtown. And then the student grade level progression. So what that means is, so 2025 is the freshman class now. 2024 is the sophomore class. And so the sophomore class is the most in danger. What that means is basically 9% of those students are kind of repeating 9th grade. So they're not progressing, they are not in the 10th grade. And that is pandemic, virtual school, those are students that were really, really at risk. They missed their whole 9th grade. And they did 9th grade online, most of them, because remember, we only had 15% of our kids come back in February. So they did it online, really hard to keep up by yourself. I mean, really. And so those kids, a lot of them are in our credit recovery during the day, and they'll be taking summer school. And then you go, our senior class, we're 99% on track for the graduation.
Is this kind of typical of the progression? I mean, are these numbers, or do you look at it year?
It is, yes, 10th grade is usually a struggle.
Just a little one, and then it goes back up.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get, these kids stay here, we'll get them to where they will graduate, but it is a bigger number right now than ever before. Again, across the school system, same thing.
Do you think that the 2023 number is lower because of COVID, or is that also normal?
So that's the year class, yes, so it's always below the senior class. I think that's a little bit low, yes. I think that's due to recovery as well. And then it also includes, kids that have come in without credits, they weren't here at the beginning. And so this little graph is, talks about, you can see that kind of the table up here, what it is, but this is based on MAP test, which we've given twice now. We've given 3 times, but this is based on the September and then the December. So of course you want kids up in the upper right quadrant. That's where you want them, high achievement, high growth. And we have, if you look at ELA, a number of kids that are high achieving but low growth in the ELA. So that's the bottom right. Math, it's a little bit more, of course, more even across the board. But again, this is the December results. And of course, we have 2 students here that might be able to talk a little bit more about December. It was, again, across the school system, which made me feel a little bit better, that we didn't make as much growth as anticipated. I know there was a lot going on in December. Y'all took that when we came back from Thanksgiving, right? You had a number of kids were getting ready to college, trying to get their college applications in on January 1st. Some kids were taking ACT like on Saturday. Final exams, kids trying to get projects in, that kind of thing. I think it was a horrible time, but thoughts on why we may not have shown growth on that.
Personally, like when my dad saw my results, he was really shocked because he knew that I could do better.
Right.
But like I had to explain to him that like I had a lot of finals that I was studying for. So when I was sitting in front of my computer for an hour and a half, I was not as zoned in as I would normally be because I'm thinking I have this many tests I need to study for, I have to get this over with. So really, if it doesn't affect my grades, I have other stuff.
Especially with like the timing, I think a lot of, especially it's seniors too, because they're so close to done, they're not motivated to take a test that like won't really affect anything that they do.
Yeah, did kids talk about that? I know my daughter.
Yes.
Especially as a
Yes,
senior,
a lot of
she's
kids
like,
talk about
I'm just gonna Christmas tree. And we were like, no, you can't read as much as you want to.
We did, and that's probably having a long teacher.
That doesn't
But,
help.
we did, the principals, high school principals did bring up that the seniors just do not, that like taking it in
Right.
March, that we did not, that seniors do not need to take it in
Yeah,
March.
sure, yeah.
But we also tried to say there's gotta be a different, better time. I don't know when the better time would be, but maybe January, but.
But it's also new, it's new to, so hopefully that freshman class gets used to it being systemic and just deal with it.
I think like I don't know, I think this time around on the announcements, I'm not sure who it was, but they were saying that there's like monitoring for guessing and things like that. So I think that might have motivated people to like not just click random answers and actually take their time and figure the problem out.
Just rapid guessing, we call you back in and we give you another chance.
Oh.
We sure do. That's like the whole statistical with the rapid guessing if you finish the 7 minutes.
Right.
So, I know with my own children, that Debbie and Trent are in 8th grade, I really talk to them about you need to take this seriously. We just took it last week. You really need to take this seriously because it does affect the classes you'll be in next year at Midtown. You know, if you need math support, we're gonna put you in math support because that's the whole point. So, you know, I did a little bit better just as a parent. I was like, okay, you gotta go to bed earlier. You gotta, that kind of eat a good breakfast. I mean, I tried to at my own house be a little bit more on that with them. So we'll see.
I
But
think
anyway,
it
that's
was-
kind of an interesting graph.
It's definitely helpful when you do the announcements, like when you come on and kind of establish norms.
Yeah.
And then I think it's very helpful as a teacher to then like an add-on or second, you know, kind of in a way. And so this time talking about how this is going to affect our scheduling next year, you know, the more we can do little reminders in some ways like that. And then also, I don't know how we communicate it. I don't know what we kind of think would be best, but it could be kind of an opportunity to say, you do really well on this, and that also gets you, like, perhaps you'll be, it's not just about like remedial, but we might, you know, use this to encourage students to take AP classes or have more additional opportunities, you know. I don't know what it is that we could set up as kind of an incentive, kind of like the way the PSAT doesn't really matter, you know, like really, but it does to some extent to certain students, and it like feels important because you might get recognized for scholarships, like that's always a line when I'm administering it. And so it's like, how can we say, this will help you get recognized, and like, maybe we build, I don't know what the district allows, but maybe we build in some opportunities for some type of programming, or maybe it's like you get first dibs on class choice if you grow a certain amount, like, I don't know, kids might game it, but maybe there's an opportunity to touch it on higher.
No, you're right. I mean, if we keep referring to these.
I do want to,
I think they'll take it more, they will. I mean, it was completely kind of out of the blue. And, you know, and we're just looking for growth. It doesn't have to be a certain, you know, we were just looking for 3 percentage point growth over the year. So every student can do that no matter where they are. I mean, kids need to understand it really is individualized. We're not expecting a certain score, you know, we're not rated on it, we're not, that kind of thing, so.
and that's what I want to,
I think that's all I'm trying to say something.
I wanted to focus on that point, is that we're looking at growth. And so there's no correlation between MAP and AP classes and things of that nature. So you can't use that as your benchmark for that, where there is a correlation between the PSAT and College Board for the AP classes. So the whole goal is to show growth over the year, not really to say you must have this achievement. It's to look at the individual person's path towards moving or growing throughout the school year and from year to year.
So just to be clear, I wasn't suggesting having a benchmark. I'm suggesting the fact that when I'm a 9th grade student who seems to be overachieving in my 9th grade social studies class, that Ms. Wren and I have used math data to be another piece of information to say, like, is this kid ready for AP World History? And I think, so I think there would be some sort of correlation. It's not a benchmark saying like this hard number is what you need to take AP classes, by no means. But if we're looking at a student saying, can the student level up? Is it a worthwhile risk? I feel like it should be something we factor in.
And then this last page is just talks about the fall to winter growth by subgroups. So interesting that we made greater growth in math, as we talked about, but if you look at that, and our Black students made big growth, you know, either mythical or showed growth at a pretty high rate in math. ELA was really all over the board. I just think the students just done with reading and that, you know, I just think, but I was really happy about the math.
Yeah.
That there is growth, and I hope there'll be more. I think, you know, math is a little bit not easier. I'm not saying it's easier math
More
person, but
It's easier to quantify.
yes, and you can like spend time practice, you know.
Right.
I think the first
It's easier
semester of
to
math, get back into math, I think you could show growth that way, so. Okay, so
Because
that's,
my understanding is none of the math test is writing oriented, right? It's all multiple choice.
yeah, so.
Yes,
Okay,
it's none that's
well-
writing. It's all about reading and comprehension.
So can you say that one more time, it's all?
It's not about writing. It's about reading skills, comprehension, maybe grammar, but it's not about writing.
But sometimes students can express through their writing comprehension better than on a multiple choice.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, one other thing that I just, because my old school used this as well, they're like really emphasizing that the harder the questions get, the better you do it. Because I heard like the chatter of kids afterward being like, oh my God, can you believe I got this and I got that? And like, it didn't always seem to be seeing that as a compliment. Like the harder questions you're getting, you get a really long text, it means you just nailed the last one, possibly, you know, and it's like, from a motivating standpoint, I think that can be something that we come back to on other days. The harder it's getting, the better you're doing.
Right. Okay,
So do you,
we're done with that.
all right, I know you wanted.
Kyla was gonna do it because she's on the cat. but she-
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So, and Diane's here, and I'll say also Jennifer Keenan has sat through this with her own Go team over at Howard as well. So, the school system has got a facilities master plan. Some of y'all have looked at this because I've pushed it out. If you haven't, we'll just review it, and Diane is here to take if anybody has feedback, because there will be future meetings, community meetings.
Which one do you want to look at?
We want to look at the two.
Proposed
These two?
scenario?
Yeah, two scenarios.
Just in this order?
Yes.
Centennial first?
Sure.
Which file are you pulling up, Barbara?
Centennial.
So Centennial Academy, they feed into Midtown currently. Their 8th grade comes here. It's a K to 8, and their 8th grade comes here. If they're zoned, it has a number of transfer students, so they would not come here, but if they're zoned, so.
And it's located over on like Georgia Tech, on the other side. of the interstate.
So here are some factors that we know is happening. Centennial Academy is over capacity, absolutely they are. We're over capacity, and the Washington cluster schools are under capacity. So this is what's being, some things proposed for the 23-24 school year, not this year. Our Centennial students in 8th grade would come here this fall. So to address overcrowding at Midtown High School and underutilization at Washington High School, high school students zoned for the Centennial Academy attendance zone would be redistricted from Midtown to Washington High School, which is about 229 students in the 23-24 school year.
And that would continue every year after that.
Yes. And then, so 24-25, so the year after that, to address capacity challenges at Centennial itself. Centennial Academy and APS will determine a pathway for charter renewal. They are a charter school, subject to Atlanta Board of Education and Georgia DOE approvals. Centennial capacity is now 606. Modulars are used to achieve its currently chartered maximum enrollment of 800 at the loss of athletic and recreational space. So the modulars are on their space, their field space. So there are two scenarios here. One, Centennial Academy will change to a K-8 locally authorized charter for the 24-25 school year, contingent on ABOE and GDOE. The Centennial attendance zone will be incorporated into Hollis Academy, which is a K-8, by redistricting 398 students from Centennial Academy to Hollis Academy during the 24-25 school year. These are all of the end zone K-8 students. For the 24-25 renewal, Centennial and APS would negotiate enrollment in facilities limited by whatever enrollment cap is set by the charter.
So if we're saying we would just change the attendance lines so that Centennial wouldn't be over capacity.
Yes,
Okay.
and what is different about this is right now, if you live in the Centennial zone, you know, like the Midtown zone or the Morningside zone or whatever, you go there. right now, they're looking at, you apply to go to Centennial. That that it is a charter school, and just because it's right next door doesn't mean you go there. You can apply to go there, that's fine. But if you don't, you're going to Hollis. So, and then you go to Washington. So that's different. When that school opened, it was definitely for the kids in the Centennial zone, in the Centennial apartments. So this is different. This is very different. Scenario 2, continue the charter at Centennial as a conversion charter with a facility cap of 600 in the 24-25 school year, contingent again on ABOE and Georgia DOE. Centennial is projected to have an enrollment of 812 in the school year 26-27. 414 of those students would be from out of zone. Again, they take transfers. Its charter management enrollment is 800. The facility capacity is 606. Once the charter is renewed at 600, stop accepting new out of zone students until the school reaches 90% of capacity.
Can you explain what out of zone means exactly? That's people who apply, you don't apply to get in, you're from the transfer.
So Centennial has a number of students that apply. They live all over the city, and then they come there. A number of them, their parents may work at Georgia Tech, may work at like Coca-Cola, which is that huge thing. That's how it really started, serving a lot of family parents that worked in that area. And so it got very large with transfers, very large, and to the point where it's overcrowded. So I think the school system is trying to draw that back in a fairer way. Because also a number of those parents are very surprised, even though they're told year after year, very surprised to know that after 8th grade, they're not coming to Midtown.
Yeah.
It was a limited time, and that brings up, we've had a couple of parents call about that. We're just like, no, it's, you're not coming here, but, it's just the way it is, so, so those are the 2 scenarios
Okay.
that are,
Can we look at the?
so, what this does again for Midtown is just reduces the number of 9th graders coming in. So. I don't know, Colin, if you want, I just talked about, I don't know,
Did you just talk about
the map, like, there are maps up there. I can't begin to interpret the maps. We can show the maps.
Do you want me to talk about the elementary options?
So,
The elementary options, do you want me to?
are we going to talk about, is that coming? Yes.
I was
So,
wondering,
okay.
like, can we,
You can take on this because you have elementary children.
Just for our record keeping, would it be okay if, like, with the Centennial scenario, if we go through the questions and then you go to the elementary one? Okay, so the first question is, what were the Go Team's initial thoughts and reactions to the Centennial scenario? So do you guys have any thoughts, reactions? As Betsy said, the 2 scenarios are, one is that Centennial would become a startup charter, which means it doesn't have an attendance zone. And anybody who is currently zoned in Midtown cluster would then be zoned for Washington cluster. And then the other scenario is Centennial would maintain itself as a conversion charter, which means it has an attendance zone, plus it can take on students who apply, and if there's more students than seats, it's done through lottery like other charters. But those students in Centennial's attendance zone would still then go to Washington High School, not Midtown. So,
For both of those options, my understanding is it doesn't matter. The students in Centennial would be removed and sent to Washington cluster. And currently, as it stands, there are a portion of students, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Bachman, that do attend Midtown from Centennial currently.
Yes. From in the attendance zone of Centennial. In fact, the transfer applicants.
But the
do not.
transfer applicants do not. As it relates to Centennial as a Go Team, I think this has kind of been our first conversation, so to speak, about Centennial. So, you asked the question, this is the first time that we've heard of it.
There's been multiple conversations about the elementary schools, but not the actual high school issues in Centennial. So that was a surprise for me. I'm just gonna be, my opinion. I do question, I understand that there's overcrowding with Midtown, and I do want to come up with a solution for Midtown, the overcrowding. However, I do feel a little slighted in the sense of we've been having this conversation about elementary for 6 years, I don't know, for a very long time. And the conversation about Centennial was had and kind of, this is what it's going to be, and that was it. I didn't feel like there was a conversation. And I do think that with equity at the forefront, there needs to be a different conversation. I know we're looking at numbers, but we also need to look at the diversity of the schools. And I don't think I don't feel like that was done. I don't feel like that conversation, it was the same conversation in comparison to the elementary schools. So that's my opinion.
And I feel, since I was around during the last painful round of school redistricting, that we talked about Centennial a ton, as far as how it plays into elementary, middle, and then most importantly, high school. And so I wasn't surprised at all by that, because it was one of the scenarios that had been brought up multiple times. But then when everybody just kind of let the dust settle, it's now come back because the attendance zone is kind of gerrymandered pretty heavily on the other side of the interstate. But so I wasn't surprised by it, and it made sense logically, especially when you're talking about space and underutilized facilities.
How long ago was the redistricting process?
It was 2012, 2011. 2011, 12 was the really painful, very painful. That really was a lot of this area. It was Kimber Park, like in the park, it was all that. It was ugly. That's the best way to say it.
It started out actual and then got emotional pretty hardcore. So.
Yeah, I mean, my first reaction to seeing it was just like, I think I know the racial demographics, and I think that Centennial, I'm curious about what the specific numbers are, but my assumption is that as a student that has a very significant black population is very significant. And knowing that, I mean, I have been to 2 district level PDs where we have been talking about what our values are as a district, and spend an entire day talking about the passion and zeal we have for re-envisioning a school system that truly values every person in a way that is the same, or frankly, even equity means going farther than equality. And like, to me, I just had an initial gut reaction of like, whoa, it really? Like, we're going to just carve off a heavily dense area of Black students out of Midtown right at the time when Midtown's already, since I've been here, undergone like a really significant population and culture shift. I was surprised. And feeling like I would appreciate more context. I don't know what options are on the table or available, but I certainly was surprised by the statement.
I mean, I feel like there does need to be a conversation about how they select students, whether that's in zone or out of zone, and make that have the conversation communicated a little bit better with parents so that they understand that if they are zoned, then they can still remain at Midtown. I would like to see them remain at Midtown. And if they are not zoned, then they are there on a transfer or whatever, whatever it's called, then they would then, after the 8th grade, they would return back to wherever their home school may be, or if they designate one of the other clusters for a percentage of those students. However, I think that that's a big blow to our cluster.
That's what it is now.
Right.
If you're in zone.
If you're in zone, I think it should stay.
And just clarification, you said about how they select students. Are you talking about Centennial?
Centennial, right. So, because so I guess the bigger question would be, of the students that the 200 are we saying the 200 students that would be slated to come to grade, all of those are in zone students, correct?
Yes. And it's not 200 at a time. It's about 40 kids every 8th grade. So it's a building thing. We don't get 220 kids from Centennial.
Okay, so it's really only 40 kids that we're talking about. That's not only.
Right. I mean, 40 times 4 though, but I mean, it adds and then kids move into Centennial. That's just the 8th grade class. And students move into Centennial in 10th grade, 11th grade. It's not a pure number, but.
In relation to the other, to Howard, do we know the demographics of the number of minorities that come in from Howard versus Centennial? Just out of curiosity.
I don't know them. No, I don't know that.
Is there another question, Diane, that?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to capture everything. And then the other question is, so I already have one question. What questions does your Go team have with the facilities master planning team? And that would be the demographics of the in-zone students at Centennial and compare to Howard, right? How was equity considered? Yes. And the third one that I think I heard was that that your Go team didn't feel that the community was quite as engaged.
Maybe the question should be, we don't know how engaged the Centennial community was in the issue, since it directly affects them.
And the timeline, Diane, because, I mean, this was, to me, it felt like it was moving pretty quickly, like these were the options, they're going to make a decision pretty rapidly. Is there a time, but what's the time frame? Because as I said, it felt new to me because in 2010, 2011, I wasn't checked into this conversation at all. Because my kids weren't at any of those levels. So it wasn't a thought for me. However, being engaged in the elementary schools conversations and then hearing this at that meeting, it was surprising. So I guess my conversation would be, is the timeline going to be, what's the timeline for Centennial?
It wasn't on that form?
At the bottom, it just says you can give your feedback on March 28th. So,
Well, no, I meant in terms of like what you, I thought Betsy
well,
said.
when the
what-
decision would be made, that was the question.
Right.
And I think that the board seriously talks about it in May and then, April and May and then a vote in June.
Okay.
Dr. Bauer, it might be helpful to show the chart that shows the enrollment numbers. I don't know if you guys can easily find it, and how the numbers change, the percentage, the capacity percentages.
Okay.
Is that on here?
I don't know.
You have to look at
In the
master-
facilities planning presentation itself.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, it's on page, I think 27. I think it starts there. Sorry.
What do we
It
look
might be
for?
down one.
Centennial's the bottom.
Yeah, it might be.
27, this is page. oh, wait,
It's 27.
26 or maybe 27. But you can see where the enrollment for Midtown is building. I mean, you can see why this discussion would come about. Because by 26, 27, if we don't do anything, we'll be at 107% of capacity. Which you don't want to be, you want to be about 90% really. You don't want to be maxed out like that.
Has there ever been, I don't know if this is Diane, this is something reports a question. Has there ever been a discussion of having a Centennial High School that would like alleviate some of the pressure? Because I think
That's Washington. That's the problem.
They don't have space for that. They
Right.
don't have
yes, I
space.
know, I'm not in that current building. I'm just,
It's the same way as my neighbor charter school.
yeah,
That's why those kids now go to Major Jackson.
right.
Because
So-
they invested in it.
What I know about that is when it comes to be a conversion charter, there are more limitations. If Centennial were to become its own startup charter, which would be like Atlanta Neighborhood Charter School or Drew, then they have more flexibility as to what grade ranges they could offer. Because, so a conversion charter is kind of a remnant from 15 years ago, a little bit, in that conversion charters are schools and districts, and they keep their attendance zone, but they get that flexibility from both their local school board and the state. And that came in before there were charter systems, before there were strategic waiver systems, before there were. So in terms of Centennial adding 9 through 12, I do not know if Centennial in and of itself has discussed that option if they were to become a startup charter.
And is the reason that there's not any enrollment from Centennial County to Washington and it's only going to Midtown because Midtown is, this is not going to sound right, but because Midtown is just academically better? Is that, what's the reason behind
That's
that?
where they're zoned.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it's just looking at the
They could choose
attendance
to run
lines.
the school close to them, since there's room, they could transfer to Washington.
Washington's below enrollment.
Their numbers look good. Not a lot of people.
It's, I think we should acknowledge, right, if a significantly underutilized school, like, it's probably fair to say that there's an element of like, parents are trying to find other places to send their kids, and I just feel, again, going back to like noting how I feel, it just.
Well, but I don't think you can say that because you have to also look at housing situations and how Atlanta's demographics have changed and growth.
Yeah, I
in
don't know
different
that that's
areas.
a choice that they're making. It's
Yeah.
just the students aren't there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I like there's the KIPP High School is over like in like somewhat close to Washington, right? Like it would be, I don't know.
Yeah, there's other choices. You're right.
Yeah.
There is some of that. going on.
There's also the single gender that kids can go to.
Right.
You know, so it's a number of factors. Yeah.
And will this, so, and if the scenario is chosen where the kids on Centennial County will not be zoned for Washington, is it certain that Washington will have better circumstances academically, like similar to Midtown if they get more enrollment?
They'll
Or
get more
just
money.
sending-
They'll get more money with more
They'll get more
students.
Okay.
Yes.
You also have to look at the mathematics. The challenge with some schools is that when you're under enrolled, you're smaller numbers, so it's harder to reach certain numbers. You know, if it has been that way historically.
And I think it's important also to point out that every high school in APS does offer different programs. Washington has an agriculture program, if I recall correctly. And if I recall it, it's also Washington where they have a culinary program, which I don't think either of those are at Midtown or Jackson or, so, you know, this isn't, it isn't where every high school is a cookie cutter of every other high school. So there are opportunities at Washington that are currently at Midtown, and vice versa. There are opportunities at Midtown that aren't at Washington.
What's their signature program? Just out of curiosity.
I want to say STEM.
You can see that Mayor Jackson's going to be in this same position in a year there. Next year, they are slated to have over 1,500 kids at Mayor Jackson. That school hasn't seen that ever. And it has been rapid, like in the last 3 years. The building over there, the apartment, I mean,
And
this
that's
is.
not slowing down there.
No, it's, they're gonna have to make some, I'm sure the system's gonna have to make some hard decisions about that, you know.
I feel like they're building so much stuff too, though, in like where Centennial is.
Yep.
It's gonna be the same.
Right.
It's gonna be. Yeah.
And the Washington principal is very excited to get more students, you know, I mean, that's a historic school.
Mhm.
That is, and so all the high school principals we are meeting today, and I mean, they want these students, she desperately wants these students.
That's wild to see Washington's number enrollment that low, like is it the oldest APS school?
For
High school?
for black students,
Yeah.
we started as that,
Of course.
yeah.
And they just celebrated, what, 125 years, I think?
So,
No, 100.
so that's, I mean, that's the reason for the scenarios. you know.
So can we get, unless somebody has any questions or comments for APS, beyond what we already said, can we look at,
The elementary.
yeah. Yeah. jump
So
on that.
is there, does anyone know like a comparison of the demographics at Washington compared to Centennial Academy? Are they similar? Are the demographics similar?
I mean, Centennial is probably 90 to 95% black.
Yeah, it's changed though, Centennial, because say if you move into Atlantic Station, if you move into, you're a Georgia Tech professor or you're, you know, and if you live there, you go to Centennial. That school has changed the demographics over the last 5 years. More kids of color, more white students, more Asian students. So it's different. It's different than it was, say, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, Centennial.
And also Georgia Tech bought up all that land, so you, I mean, you used to have a lot of the housing issues over there, and Georgia Tech owns a lot of it, or Georgia State, my hierarchy.
Right.
So things have been changing for a while.
Yeah, I genuinely don't know enough about Washington to like, again, just framing things as that reactions I'm having versus conclusions I'm making. So I have, since moving here, I teach government class. I have gotten into some of the redevelopment history of the city of Atlanta, and I know that the area of Centennial is an important part of the history of public housing in the United States. This idea of creating mixed income communities that would create new avenues of educational opportunity. That was a big part of the argument for redevelopment, was creating these new pathways. And I just have a gut feeling from my knowledge of how difficult conversations about redistricting work in other places where I've worked, and research and knowledge of this in general, that it feels like I just want to make sure that parents are being heavily consulted, and it doesn't feel like there is an option that allows parents to choose something other than just going to Washington High School. And what if that same decision was made about sections of, I mean, I've sat in enough elementary meetings at this point to know the way people talk about being shifted to Hope Hill. And it just feels hypocritical, I'm gonna say. It could be a great thing for Washington, it could be a great thing for kids. Neighborhoods are changing all over the city, but it still does feel hypocritical from my vantage point.
So now we'll talk a little bit about the elementary situation here in this cluster. So we have the Inman building, and right now it's housing Morningside, just on a 2-year, for a 2-year plan, while they're finishing some renovation and addition at Morningside. If you've gone by there, you're seeing it's a brand new building is being built on their field. So there are a couple of scenarios for what do you do with the Inman facility after Morningside moves out and moves back into. So Kyle, I'll let you introduce these.
Okay, so the first scenario that's up on the screen is to create the new Inman building as a K-5. That would mean that first, they would be moving the 239 students from Morningside to the new Inman facility. And then they would move 400 students of the Springdale Park location to the Inman facility and move 8 students. It's the isolated area in Morningside. And then a small number of students from the DeKalb County Emory Annex area. And then they would move the 159 students that are currently in the Park neighborhood out of Maryland and send them to Springdale Park.
So
they're-
Midtown would go to Inland Elementary, let's just call it that. If in this scenario, all this area would just go to Inland Elementary instead of going to Springdale now, which is what they do.
And some of the comments with this particular model is that it does break up some neighborhoods. They've redrawn the lines. I'm not 100% sure on where the redrawing of the lines are, but it was brought up that they moved the line to better accommodate some neighborhoods, but it does break up. It still does break up some neighborhoods. So it's not like all of Morningside going to one school, because of course, all of Morningside cannot fit in the building. All of Springdale Park cannot fit in the building. There was questions in the meeting about, well, if you're taking out the 400 students from Springdale, why are you moving the Mary Lynn students, the Inman Park students from Mary Lynn, as that would make Mary Lynn an underutilized with about, I think it was running them at about 53-54%. So there were concerns about, can you leave the students at Mary Lynn and try to figure out how to maneuver or redraw the line so that you don't have portions or neighborhoods being split that were currently at another school building, which may become difficult because that's a lot of students from Springdale Park and there's quite a few students from Morningside. But particularly those 2 smaller neighborhoods down in the bottom. The second, we'll scroll, the second option was to create a dual campus. So a K through second would remain in the Springdale Park building, and then the Inman facility would become a 3rd to 5th. And that would mean they would move 239 students from Morningside, K through 5, and kind of annex them in the 2 locations. And then they would move the 14 and the 8 students. And then if I'm not mistaken, Inman Park still moves to Spark.
No, Maryland.
Yeah, that's what,
Maryland remains unchanged.
Yeah, Maryland remains unchanged. So in this particular situation, they're just moving, it's kind of a shuffle of the Morningside students again. And the concerns were that makes for 2 really large campuses, and they would be well over 1,000. And I would say 4 to 6 years out. And the issue with that is like some of the dual campuses that we have, or the district has in North Atlanta, I think Brandon, Jackson, there's one more, Smith, all have dual campuses, but currently the enrollment is down, way down. So even if you combine them, the enrollment for these 2 campuses would be well over what those campuses have now. So that also was a concern that.
So you're saying that the 3 through 5 annex at Inman would be over 1,000?
Well, them combined. So I think one was at
I'm just thinking capacity, because I know Inman is a much larger school.
Well, Springdale would be, Springdale would be
Springdale
over
would
1,000.
be.
Springdale,
Total, the
right.
K through 2,
But it would be two
Right,
campuses.
But it would
right,
be
but it'd
two
be
campuses.
split at 2 campuses.
It would
Right.
be two
Okay.
campuses,
I
but
got
they
it.
would be well over 1,000.
Yeah.
Wait, so is there like not enough room in the one campus to just have it combined?
There is not.
We've never had one in Springdale Park.
So right now, Springdale Park, their kindergartners are annexed at the Methodist Church down the street because there's not enough room.
But what would the capacity be at 3 through 5, do you know, for the
3
annex?
through 5, let's see.
I was just curious, because we know that building.
In 2026 on here, it says 553.
So in that scenario, then the Inman building is half utilized ballpark. And we're looking at that. So. Interesting.
Let me make sure that's the right number because I feel like it's not.
It would make sense, though.
This one says 801 and, but there's nothing listed there. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm not 100% for sure. But it was well over 1,000. So there it is.
So you can see, right, how it breaks down with each scenario.
Yes.
I have two questions. Just what is the C represent? Is that what it is? Like on the map, if you go back up. Like what is the C?
Oh, what is that
Oh.
area?
Yeah. Like
That's funny.
That's the,
like Druid Hills. or something.
right, where the.
Yeah,
That's where the eight
West
students.
Coast, Leon, yeah,
Right.
that's going out toward Decatur.
I was just-
It's probably had the same question.
And then
Yeah.
why is it just a select, I don't know, I feel like you're moving hundreds of students and then you're moving 8 kids. Or you're
Because of
moving
where,
14.
because of where the,
Because of
where
where
the
they're-
straw. Because there's always gonna be somebody who's caught. Like, you're my next door neighbor, you go to a different elementary school than I go to. Just because the line is right down that road.
Or they could do a continuous line or something like.
That was an area that was annexed into the city of Atlanta in the last few years.
So
So it's
even
this
if we
weird-
have.
And it's kind of like, almost like a little satellite out there.
You're
So very
one of the 8
small.
students that has to.
And from a transfer, it might be,
Just depends on.
those 8 students might be driven, or let me phrase it, that area might be driven by transportation efficiency
Right.
versus more of a enrollment efficiency. Like transportation may have found that, you know what, it's a lot more efficient for us to run the buses this way.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Did you find as a yourself leaning any particular way? Actually, like yours is to proposals?
My personal opinion, I didn't like either of these scenarios. I felt like if the district was talking about equity, then it was more equitable for all of us to make the 4-5. That's my personal opinion. I felt like all of the students would have all of the same opportunities given to them before they get to middle school, which provides more cohesive move to middle school because that is a hard time for them anyway. And you don't have all of the schools kind of coming in this evening, number one in the bush. They've all, been to the same field trips. They've had all the same instruction, and we know that to be true. Looking at these two scenarios, I would say that one of the complaints with the 4-5 was that some neighborhoods felt like that it was another transition. So to me, the split campus is another transition. If that was the argument before, it would be the same. I think that looking at these different scenarios, again, Sizemore put these two together and they're purely looking at numbers, but I do think that demographics should have been taken into consideration to try to make the schools as diverse as possible. I think a K-5 overall is probably a better fit for students. But I think the split campus for me is a little difficult, problematic, but that's my personal opinion. I think a K-5 is a more cohesive situation for students, but I do think they need to look at the lines to see if they can kind of do some maneuvering to salvage neighborhoods of students better. If that's the option that they select, since the 4-5 is not on the table.
I attended one of the facility plan. I can't remember what the meeting was, but I just remember being in a breakout room and being really surprised by just how brazen, like some parents were like, I don't want my student basically said going, like joining with Hoopville. I was shocked in my breakout room, my experience only, but I would assume that might be something that's happening.
That's pretty typical. I mean,
Yeah, which is-
It's sad.
that's nothing new. I mean, of course, Hopeville is kind of the redheaded stepsister of the Midtown cluster, and what people fail to realize is Midtown, Hopeville is actually a really good school. My son goes there, so like it's actually a really good school. I think in terms of the K-5 situation, if you think about numbers and alleviating, numbers, there's no easy way to do this. I'm with Kyle. Like I would prefer the 4-5, and I get my parents like another transition. How kids are gonna be transitioning their whole lives. Like it is what it is. But a K-5 situation would be more ideal, because if we talk about splitting, okay, now 200 kids out of this, and 200, it's just like, well, not really. Just might as well just create another. If overcrowding is the issue, might as well just create another elementary school, because that's what typically is done in districts. They build another elementary school. But here we have land issues, so of course that's
Does anybody have any questions or APS about this scenario? We kind of.
Do we know why 4-5 was taken off the table, Diane?
I am not privy to that information.
I thought they said it wouldn't solve the overcrowding. Like,
But
it
nothing
didn't
solved the
provide the
overcrowding.
long-term, it didn't provide a long-term solution. And also a lot of the Hope Hill community was against it. The Hope Hill Go team expressed a lot of concerns about it.
However, none of these options is an end-all be-all solution, because they're going to still have to come back to the table and have a conversation about overcrowding within the next 6 years or so, right? Because none of this solves it.
I don't understand the issue. Like, I mean, everybody, and this is kind of different from like where I grew up. We had multiple feeder middle schools that of course fed into one high school, but everybody has to see each other at Howard anyways. Like, you're gonna have to see each other. It's not like they're gonna, if you stay in this neighborhood, you're coming to Midtown. And there's only one middle school, Howard, and there's only one high school, Midtown. So I don't understand, like, that mentality just doesn't make any sense, because there's no getting around it. You're gonna have to see these kids eventually anyways, whether or not it's in kindergarten, 6th grade, or 9th grade, you're gonna have to see them.
Right. Well, if nobody has any questions for APS anymore.
Any more initial thoughts and
Initial
reactions?
thoughts?
It feels to me like the K-5 option makes more sense. Like the map area alone, I'm just, feels like for a school community. I don't sound like for elementary, but my preference I think would be K-5, just from what I know right now.
I agree.
Scenario one.
It seems like it would be more walkable too, or probably more kids. And just,
I think some of the comments I've read around for that is the walkability.
I remember that being a big thing a few years ago. Walkability, like a lot of people chose that as being very important, so.
You're correct, many of the Morningside parents did say that was that was a factor for them. I mean, we live in Inman Park. I can't walk to any of the schools, so that's not of a high priority to me. But there were quite a few vocal parents that wanted to be able walk to their school because that is currently what they may do now. But there are neighborhoods that don't have that same option,
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for your questions and ideas. This will all come to a head by the end of the year or June, so we'll know next year. All right. As far as the rest of the agenda,
Y'all took a vote on the budget, right?
yes, we did. Yep, we did our job.
The agenda said the meeting started at 4:30, so.
I apologize.
Just with the, we have elections coming up. And so Diane, I think we have a robust slate of parents. We have 5, is that right? And then we do have 2 staff members, right?
Yeah, I think you're in the green. But if you know anybody at any other schools, we still have a number of schools where we're looking for either a staff member and or parents, so please encourage people in their community.
I know, that's so as far as the principal's report, you feel the ACEs kind of covered most everything, nothing new and spectacular we need to work out. Any announcements?
Do your budget training.
I'm sorry?
If you haven't completed your budget training, please do your budget training. And Midtown has 5 parents and 2 staff members, so.
Okay.
I just have one question. So for like the K through 5, is that basically one school versus 2 schools?
Yeah.
Why would they like want to separate the kids?
Because it's just another way that you can do it. They gotta give you choices. So,
And I mean, a lot of times in communities, communities like their principals, they like the name of the school, they feel that there's already a culture and all of that sometimes, rather than starting something completely new. I mean, human psychology is we abhor change.
Right.
I mean, just as general, change is hard, so.
and we already have those schools in North Atlanta. It's already been done, so people know it can work. So it's
It was the split neighborhood issue as well. Under the dual campus, the Virginia Highland neighborhood would still be at Spark.
Yeah.
Under the K through 5, half of Virginia Highland will go to Spark and half will go to the new Inman Elementary School.
Okay, no announcements? Anybody else? No? Recognition of visitors. We have Diane Jacoby, obviously. Yes, and then we also have Jennifer. who's
Jennifer
on
Keenan.
The Midtown Go Team, and I believe you get to enjoy your meeting tomorrow.
Howard Go Team, yes.
So,
Yep, we have ours tomorrow.
all right. If there are no other questions, concerns, or issues, is there a move to adjourn? Artist says yes. A second? Carlos says second. All those in favor? All right. All right. Thank you.